Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a very special edition of the show. We have a absolute amazing guest here today, legendary frontman of Jethro Tull, Mr. Ian Anderson. Hello, Ian. Thanks so much for joining us here on Sea of Tranquility.
Well, nice to be with you. Fire away. How can I be of assistance?
All right. So we've got a brand new album, The Zealot Gene. First new Jethro Tull release since the Christmas album in 2003, and first new release of all new material from the band since .com in 1999. And a lot has happened in the years since the Christmas album. Got 4 Ian Anderson solo releases, including a return to the Thick as Brick concept, a complete overhaul of the band we know as Jethro Tull. So when did you decide, okay, it's time to go back and revisit Jethro Tull and do a brand new album?
Well, the guys in the band have been playing with me for something like 15, 16 years. It seemed appropriate that after all that time, since they've done hundreds and hundreds of concerts as Jethro Tull in various parts of the world, but never actually been on an album simply released as Jethro Tull. And since the Zealot Gene was recorded originally as a rock album with those same musicians, I thought then we'll call it Jethro Tull. Simple as that, really.
Yeah, why not, right? I think the fans are pretty happy about it. So one of the things I wanted to touch on, one of the missions of our channel here on our website at Sea of Tranquility has always been to promote new music from new bands, new music from classic bands, as well as to revisit the legendary albums themselves. And I think a challenge has always been, for myself personally, is to get older listeners who grew up on the classics of the 70s and the 80s to give something new from a legacy band a chance. The usual response is always something like, well, I don't know if they'll ever top those great albums that I grew up with, so why bother? But the reality is bands like, Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, Styx, Saxon, Judas Priest, so many others of your contemporaries have been putting out some of the strongest material in decades in recent years. So what do you say to someone who has cherished Aqualung, Thick as a Brick, so on and so forth for 40 plus years, and they're now handed the Zealot Gene and they might be a little skeptical? What's your kind of response to someone like that?
Well, I think they're very, very, very right to be skeptical about it, because frankly, if the Rolling Stones came out with a new studio album, we wouldn't really expect it to be of the importance and the caliber of their earlier work. Same thing would apply if it was the Who or Elton John or whoever. So yes, absolutely be skeptical, but by the same token, give it a chance. Maybe, just maybe, the new material is something that has evolved and developed and is worthy of attention. But, I quite see that most fans of long-established classic rock and pop groups, they're not waiting for a new album. They're waiting for a new old album. They want something that is basically going to recreate that moment when they first became fans of that particular group, and they're expecting something that will be rekindling that. And it's understandable, but it's a difficult situation for everybody to be in, because they're likely to be disappointed, and at best they may think, oh, that wasn't bad, it's sits alongside the body of work or whatever. But I would be skeptical for sure.
Sure. And it's got to be a challenge for you as well as the creator to go in and say,
yeah, well, I'm skeptical when I start writing a new album. I'm skeptical about the 4 tracks that I've just recorded for the next album. And that's a healthy way of looking at it. You've got to be slightly on guard that you're not just turning something out for the sake of doing yet another album. It's got to feel like it's something special that you haven't done before.
Right.
And that's what I'm usually trying to do. I see the link between, stylistically, the link between older songs and whatever I'm writing now. but by the same token, I have to try and make sure that what I'm writing now doesn't just sound to the casual ear like a remake of some earlier stuff. I think that's likely to be a mistake all the way around. If you deliberately set out to try and write songs in the same style and the same vein as things you've done before. But, you've got to have one eye on your past history as a point of reference to make sure that what you're doing is, that you capture little moments, the essence of some things you've done before, but you develop them in a different way.
Correct.
That's what I think the careful balance has to be.
Yeah, and I think that's what really worked on this new record for me. I mean, I think that you've done a really good job of revisiting some of the different styles of Jethro Tull over the years. I mean, there's the folk aspect, there's the bluesy hard rock, a little bit of classical, dare we say progressive rock, right? But yet nothing on this album sounds derivative of anything from Aqualung or Thick as a Brick or Songs from the Wood or what have you. I mean, how hard was that to give the fans an album that truly represents the history of Jethro Tull throughout the years in one little package here? Because I think that's what you've done.
I don't really stop to rationalize it too much. The editorial process of writing is such that I like to try and work fast. I like to try and get something done. I like to feel that I can write a song, even if it's quite elaborate, I can get the essence of it, the main ingredients, down in an hour or two, and probably write the lyrics in an hour or two. So I certainly wouldn't expect to spend more than one working day on a new song. But there are going to be some developments when it comes to the finer points of the arrangement and rehearsing it with the band in a live context, because we want to make sure it's something we can play live on stage and the arrangements are going to work in the context of a live performance. So that is where you apply a little bit of editorial control over what you've done, because you've got to at some point be a little objective about it and make sure that you're on the right track. But at the point of writing this stuff, I mean, I'm not trying to analyze it or make it too much of an intellectual process. I'm just following my nose, really, when it comes to writing stuff.
Sure. And that brings me, it's a perfect segue to my next question. So there's been a lot of talk about, is or isn't this album a concept album? Because there are some biblical references here and there. Could you kind of expand a little bit about the lyrical content of the album?
Well, it is 100% a concept album. It started off with the notion that I would write a group of songs, each one about a different powerful human emotion. So I made a list of powerful human emotions, things like greed and vengeance, hatred, anger, the bad stuff. And then I made a list of the good stuff, like love and compassion and companionship and tolerance. And, I looked at my list of words, each one of which was going to be the subject of a song. And I thought, I remember these words all featuring quite heavily in the Bible. So just out of interest, I did an internet search of biblical references of those words and came up with a whole lot of verses, and I copied and pasted some of them and put them in a document just as a point of reference when I was writing the songs. But the songs pretty much all have to do with primarily things in the world today. They are about the world we live in now or in the recent past. But it's nice to have some points of comparison. Part of the toolkit, the writer's trade. It's to use analogy and simile and metaphor, and those for me are important ways of giving something a little more depth, not just being one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. So I certainly set out to make a concept album, and that's indeed what it is, a group of songs that are all there for a very specific reason. And that was day one, January the 1st, 2017, 9 a.m., made a list of words. That was the starting point.
All right. Now, I know it's probably hard to pick individual tracks from the whole work, but are there any songs on here that really stand out to you as some of your favorites, and that maybe the band would consider doing something with in a live setting?
Well, we started playing the title track, the Zealot Gene, in February of 2020, when we actually did manage to play the only two concerts after the start of the pandemic. The only two concerts we played were in Spain, in Barcelona and Madrid, and we played the Zealot Gene then. And since we started performing again in the end of August of last year, we were continuing to play the Zealot Gene, and the next shows that we do in this year will be bringing into play two other songs, which are Mrs. Tibbetts and Mine is the Mountain. So there'll be,
you just named my three favorites.
Theoretically, okay, three songs that will be in the set from April onwards.
Okay. So you've got some history now with everybody who's in the band. I think Joe Parrish is the most recent addition to the group, who replaced Florian, who you had played with for many, many years. What led to the change of Florian leaving and Joe coming in? Where did you hook up with Joe for the first time? And are you pretty excited with working with him going forward?
Well, Florian got married a few years ago, but he let me know in the summer of 2019 that he was going to stop touring live shows because, being married and having built a state-of-the-art recording studio and a photographic studio in the same building for his wife, who's a professional photographer, he really wanted to devote the time to those new businesses, which are obviously considerable amount of investment and taking a financial risk in doing that. And he really felt he had to be able to spend all of his focused time on developing that work. So it wasn't discussed with the other guys. I thought best to let him have a few months in case he changed his mind. But by December of 2019, it was time really to tell the other guys that yes, Florian really is going. And he did in fact come back to do a few shows with us in September of last year, because our guitar player Joe was, because of his age, being much younger, was not yet fully vaccinated and couldn't travel to some of those countries. So Florian kindly stepped in to do those shows. Until Joe's second vaccination allowed him to travel again. And I'm still in touch with Florian on a regular basis. And he's unfortunately he picked a bad time to start not one but two new businesses, because pretty much within 2 months of having left Jethro Tull, we were thrust into the pandemic, which of course meant that it was very difficult with complete lockdowns to open a studio to other people and to do photographic sessions with other people in the same room. And so everything floundered for the best part of a year and a half. But hopefully things are picking up now and he's able to do some work again. Having said that, Germany a couple of weeks ago had its highest ever daily infection rate of COVID, and so did the UK also about 2 weeks ago. So any notion that COVID is behind us now is completely wrong. And most of the countries who've removed many, or in the case of the UK, all restrictions, are paying the price in terms of a rise in hospitalizations, deaths, and 1 in 20 people last week 1 in 20 people in England were infected with COVID. Yeah. And that should give folks in the USA some pause for thought, that you don't want to go back to where you were in the middle of 2019.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
That's over 2020.
Yeah.
So it would be premature to be throwing away your FFP2 mask anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, I was just in London today, and I was one of very, very few people on the train wearing a mask. And there are a few folks like me who continue to wear masks because they're either concerned about themselves or concerned that maybe they think they might have COVID and they don't want to pass it on to anybody else.
Right.
But whatever the reasons, very few people are wearing masks and very few people are observing any social distancing. And, we can see what's happening out there. I mean, it is said that 99% of the British population, at least the adult population, have antibodies against COVID, either through having been infected once or more times, or mainly through vaccination. But we do know that that's not stopping you being infected with COVID and indeed passing it on. So vaccinations are 100% worthwhile. Everybody should have taken advantage of that. But the reality is it doesn't mean that you're not going to get COVID. I mean, one of my employees has had COVID. He's fully vaccinated, three vaccinations. He had COVID 3 months ago, and he got it again last week. Mm-hmm. And I know other people who've been in reinfected in spite of being fully vaccinated. So hopefully the effects are not too bad, at least on people in their, on the right side of 70. But for those of us who are a little elderly or have any underlying health conditions, you really can't afford to take the risk. Yeah. So, we're super careful in the band and crew traveling around to different countries, because if any of us get COVID, that's the tour gone down. Yeah. We're all out of work again.
Yeah. So how are you feeling otherwise, health-wise?
With huge financial loss, not just to me, but to the promoters.
Sure.
So we have to do our absolute best to continue being lucky and continuing to be very careful, because those two things have to work together. How am I feeling generally? I'm feeling pretty good. And so far, I'm having done however many concerts I've now done, 30, 40 shows or something since last September, then I'm pretty, like any person who is involved with strenuous physical activity, you have to be pretty in touch with the state of your body and your ability to do what you do, not just physically, but mentally as well. So you really have to be kind of in tune with how you are and be monitoring carefully how you are on any given day. And that's what sound checks are for, partly. For me, it's not just technical. It's about having a bit of a warm up in a performing context to do, perform 3 or 4 songs in the late afternoon to just get a measure of how you are, so that when you walk on stage, you can, if you have to make any allowances, then you know what you have to do. But so far it's been pretty good.
Do you have do the band have plans yet? I haven't heard anything, but to come to North America to support the album?
Well, I had an email this afternoon, which I've not yet had a chance to answer, from my American agent, who's holding some dates. But we had discussed back in 2020 about looking at shows, possibly in 2022, which we both agreed was about the earliest we could expect that things might get back onto, if not an even keel, at least some level of, being practicable to do. But because everybody, including us, had been playing catch up for 2 years and rescheduling dates that should have taken place 2 years ago, some of our concerts have been rescheduled 3 times. And when we actually go to play them, it'll be the 4th time. When I go to Finland at the end of April, that will be the 4th time it's been rescheduled. And people bought their tickets back in 2019.
Yeah. Yep.
So, doing America is a bit tricky, because you've got everybody that ever was and will be is looking for availabilities in the same venues. And it's going to be really tight and difficult trying to find a geographically workable tour with the availabilities of the venues, which are the same ones as everybody else is looking for. So we're looking at 2023, summer and fall, see if we can do 3 short tours in the USA.
Well, that sounds like it's going to be good planning, because you dropped a little hint before that you're already writing material for another album. So
yeah, the trouble is that the trouble is that then you end up being there for the first time for a long time with not 1 but 2 new albums
right.
worth of material, and that's not what people are going to come to see, particularly an American audience.
Right.
They're going they will tolerate you playing 1 or 2 new songs,
right.
But they're not going to be particularly happy if I go and play an entire, an hour of new material or something. That's probably not something that's going to resonate for particularly for an American audience, where our fans tend to be much older than they are in Europe, where we do get a lot of younger people coming to shows. But in America and in the UK, it tends to be a much older demographic.
Yep. Well, we're pretty exciting to hear about additional new music. I mean, we've barely had this for a couple of months, so that'll be something good to look forward to. So ironically, we're talking about live stuff, and I totally get what you were saying before about how you have all these bands now trying to secure dates. And it seems like, I know here, and I just started going back to concerts recently, and it seems like every week another band that I really like has something that's coming up on the calendar, and it's all at the same time. So yeah, it can be, I'm sure it's challenging for the promoters and the bookers and whatnot, but ironically
challenging for the audiences, because they're going to have to make a lot of choices.
Absolutely.
The people have had an economic struggle during the last 2 years. Absolutely. And so suddenly, if 3 or 4 of your favorite bands are now going to be appearing in the course of 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to have to make some tough choices, because the chances are you can't afford to buy 4 tickets. You're going to have to choose. And so economically, there's still a lot of difficulty. And in some countries, it's definitely compounded by the nervousness that some people have, understandably, about going to concerts and sitting there in close proximity with a whole lot of other people, especially if they're not wearing masks and not socially distanced. And, we have experienced a number of concerts where we, maybe 20% of the people who had bought tickets didn't show up.
Wow.
Because, we have to assume, largely because of concerns about COVID, but it could also just be that since they bought their tickets a long time ago, that it's no longer convenient for them to come. Yeah. Maybe in the meantime they've become senile, degenerates, or they're dead. But whatever happened, they didn't show up. So in the UK, for example, we had about 20% no shows on average. And yet other concerts, we played in the Copenhagen Royal Concert Hall in the beginning of September last year, and that was complete. That was sold out, but 100% everybody came. Same thing with my Christmas concerts last year in cathedrals. Everybody showed up, and it's kind of variable. Some countries you see a definite reluctance to, even if you've already bought the tickets, a reluctance to go, but. You can't generalize. It's different every night, everywhere we go.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny. You reminded me, I just went and grabbed my vaccination card, because ironically, we happen to be talking today, and I'm actually going to see Martin Barre's band tonight. And, one of the constant questions I get from fans of the channel who watch the channel is that, how come Ian and Martin don't work together anymore? And I'm not really qualified to answer those questions. Perhaps you can set the record straight. And, you guys have both moved on from each other, and you're both doing pretty active in what you do. So no final kind of like statement or anything like about Martin Barre and Ian Anderson working together ever again? Or is that just kind of ship has sailed at this point?
Well, I don't personally feel there's any need for any final statement about anything like that. It's I was looking at the some of the historical concert dates, and going back into the 1990s, you start seeing a lot of Martin Barre solo concerts and Ian Anderson solo concerts, and that went on particularly into the new millennium. And when you go back to it, you see many periods of days or weeks on end where Martin Barre was off doing solo shows with his own band, which is something I encouraged him to do many years ago. And I said, look, you've been all this time doing the stuff that I have written and arranged and recorded and produced, and time for you to maybe find your own level of being in control and choosing your own set lists and arrangements of songs, and whether they're Jethro Tull songs or your own songs. You should really try and develop your own parallel career. And he did that, and I did that to an extent too, with a number of solo albums. But right at this point, I mean, Martin and I exchanged emails a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 times, because of he'd been forced to not cancel, but reschedule again a bunch of shows because some of his band got COVID while they were in the USA. And he has, to reschedule some shows that he had in the UK, I think, in the summer. So, there's a lot of difficulty out there in terms of getting through the complications of being on the road, and so certainly, he was upbeat about it and looking forward to continuing with the touring dates, but been a rough ride.
Well, it's great to hear you guys still communicate. I mean, that's good. I mean, I'm sure you guys worked together for so many years. I mean, nothing lasts forever in this life, right? So
yeah, well, I've been a couple of times when I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to get Martin along to do this show or that show? But when I look at his date sheet, he's always busy. He's always somewhere else, and it's so. I don't mind asking him and him telling me no, I don't want to do it, or I'm not interested, because I can handle rejection. Right. But the fact remains is that he is very, very busy, having to reschedule 2 years worth of shows, which means he's pretty chock-a-block working all the time, and actually working a whole lot more than I would want to work, because he seems quite happy going away for weeks on end, and I'm not happy. I mean, I for quite a few years have tried to shorten tours so that if you look at a year, then probably about 50% of the year I'm sleeping in somebody else's bed.
Yeah.
In either Mr. Marriott or Mr. Hilton, I'm sleeping in their beds, and but the other half I'm actually in my own bed at home, and rather than be, some bands like to go on tour for 6 months and then come home for 6 months. It doesn't work for me. I want to go away for 3 or 4 days and then come back for a couple of days. So if I could play, let's say 3, even 4 shows a week, it would still allow me to have 2 or 3 nights at home every week. And I, commute to work, and I can do that in Europe. I can't do that in the USA. The idea of commuting when you're talking about long haul travel, forget it. It's just too taxing and too injurious. But, jumping on a plane and sitting on it for an hour to get somewhere into the heart of Europe is not such a big deal. It's the equivalent of, living in Boston and saying, oh, we've got a show in New York tonight. And tomorrow's in Philadelphia, but then we're flying home to Boston again. It's just a commute. We'd even do it on the train, which is what I do in Europe quite often. I use public transport. I travel around on the train.
Yep.
So some things are kind of easy, but when you get into long haul travel, then that's definitely going to make things pretty difficult.
It's a shame it's not here in the States like it used to be in the 70s, where you could maybe plan to do like maybe a handful of big festival dates over the span of a couple of weeks and then come home. You played in front of 50,000 fans a night and you did a good job, and now you can go home and relax for a bit, right? But that's not the case here anymore.
Well, it wouldn't be the case for me anyway, because I'm not a festival guy.
Okay.
I mean, we do play some festivals when they are actually a series of individual concerts billed as a festival, but not multi-act festivals. I very rarely do those. I mean, I did a couple last autumn. I did a couple in Switzerland. And that was enough, given that I hadn't done one for a couple of years or more. That was enough for a while.
So the Isle of Wight days are done for you, right, Ian? Okay, I guess.
Oh, I absolutely hated those things. I've always hated doing those sort of shows when you got loads of acts on the bill, and there's nowhere quiet and calm that you can go. It's just noise and road crews, and it just drives me nuts. So I like I don't even like playing with support bands. I just prefer when we do the whole show, and there's nobody backstage except five in the band and 4 in the crew and a couple of promoter reps. Then it can be nice and calm and quiet and
I hear you.
Dignified place to be.
Well, as a fan, Ian, and I'm in my late 50s, I appreciate at my age going to a concert, 1,000, 1,500 people, no opening band, headliner, hour and a half, 2 hours, you go home, you get home in bed in time, before like 11:30 at night. That to me is a perfect evening out. So
well, it is, I think, for a lot of us who think of ourselves as performing in concert, because it is, each one is quite a special feeling. And for me, my comfort zone is a theater or a concert hall.
Sure.
I've never enjoyed. I think I'm right in saying I think we played 12 times in Madison Square Gardens over the years, and with all respect to the New York audience and everything else, it was just not a place I like to be. I find it so disagreeable, the big kind of place where you see tiny little dots in the distance, and this was all in the days before video screens, and
sure.
I think people got a pretty raw deal if they were sitting in the back of a 23,000 seater arena and you were just a little speck on the stage, and sound systems were pretty primitive. I mean, I can remember standing at the back of Madison Square Gardens watching Led Zeppelin. I mean, it was pathetic. It was just feeble little noise, like coming from a transistor radio from a mile away. If on the other hand, you were standing at the side of the stage or at the back of the stage, you could feel the earth move, but
oh, sure. Yeah.
It didn't translate into the back of Madison Square Gardens, let alone bigger venues.
I'm from New York. I've seen a ton of shows at the Garden over the years, and I totally can appreciate. Some have sounded really good. Some have just been absolutely awful. Depends on where.
Well, I think there are those who've made they know how to do it. Billy Joel would be one of those. I think he's someone who knows how to put on a show at the Gardens and how to make it entertaining and reach out to people. And other folks, they would struggle. But these days, with the benefit of video screens and all the technology that we use, it doesn't matter whether we're playing in a theater or whether it is a big place. It's exactly the same show, and the screen takes up the whole size of the stage, and it's so you can put a lot of information there and a lot of supplementary detail about the songs that make it, I think, more entertaining. But at the same time, sometimes it's nice just to walk out on the stage without any video, without any complications, and just play without any razzmatazz.
Yeah,
and quite often in outdoor context, when we have outdoor shows in the summer, it can be like that because they don't have video screens, and it's not safe to hang them because of wind or rain or whatever. So, we do quite a few shows each year where there's no production stuff at all. It's just sound and lights and the band in the old-fashioned way, and that's quite nice to do sometimes.
Sure.
Turning around and not seeing this enormous screen with all the things happening on it, sometimes it's a bit of relief. Anyway, must go. Got to do my next interview. So nice to talk to you.
Same here, Ian. Thanks so much for watching. And everybody watching, please go check out the Zealot Gene from Ian Anderson and the boys in Jethro Tull. Catch them out on the road. And Ian, thank you so much. I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye now.